Boise State Esports Arena. Tonight you are watching our coverage of ABC. In the ABC tournament, familiar names such as Boise State are going to be looking out for UT Dallas and UCI Esports. But of course, two big teams everyone in ABC is looking on at is Maryville University and Northwoods. Tonight, it's going to be the Broncos taking on Illinois Champlain. I'm your host, Nerdy Bird Rain, joined on desk virtually by Rich Rad. So in the past, Rich, when things have kind of started to get a little difficult for the Broncos, we've seen them pull out the quote-unquote dubbed tempo tank of Ramatra. But Rom did get a nerf prior to the start of this match. So do you have any, I guess, predictions as to how that might modify the way the Broncos go about today?
I mean, realistically, when we talk about the adjustments that have happened on the 7th, there is still some wiggle room for time to be able to acclimate to this, whereas on some certain occasions, we do see the changes happen only 24 to 48 hours ahead of time, which makes it much more substantially different. But I think the biggest factor is, even with the nerf, that there is still a lot of high value that the Ramatra does bring into this. Even though it was still a decent and fair nerf, I still think that this is an extremely powerful ultimate, specifically when it comes to the annihilation that you can utilize in team fights and be able to really control space and deny accessibility to your opponent. And I don't think that's going to change at all in the grand scale of things, just really kind of tweaking those micro nuancical details in how it's actually played with the composition.
I agree. And in addition to that, the Lucio percentage buff on his ultimate was huge in the ability for people to actually survive that, or just making sure you're ult tracking and have your util available to get out of any way of that annihilation is very important. But of course, our advice is not as important as Doc's keys to the game presented to us today by Drop In Gaming. In Overwatch, Doc's keys are understand your comp and playstyle, focus on each fight, get good ult value. Objective is more important than the kills. Drop In Gaming is the premier online platform for gamers seeking competition. Play your favorite games to win cash and prizes through free and paid entry matches and tournaments. Whether you're new to the scene or a seasoned veteran, Drop In Gaming has the right games and competition for you. To begin your competitive gaming journey, sign up at dropingaming.com. And we can, I know no one can hear them, but right behind me, the Broncos getting geared up and ready for their game. They are talking smack between each other because that's just how they are. With that being said, I'm super excited to see what's to come. One of our very own players, as I mentioned earlier to you, Rich, is actually trialing for Team Canada. That is Bagel, who you can see on the left hand of the right section of the stage. If you could follow my direction, I know I'm horrible at giving them.
It's okay, especially when you're trying to look at it, let's say in reverse camera lighting. That's the other part of it. It's like looking in the mirror and trying to fix your hair on the opposing side. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, but nonetheless, we have Bagel trialing for Team Canada, which is super excited. So, of course, he's been gearing up and getting prepared for all of these matches to the best of his ability. And let's see if any of that practice and scrimming with his trials team will come
Absolutely, and as we're entering in onto this, we're going to be really curious, as you mentioned, to see if the Ramatra is going to be a big factor here, but also potentially some of the change-ups in what we've been able to even see when it comes to the World Cup in comparison, and how maybe those teams have casted some influence on the type of competitions played at this first initial point.
We are seeing the disruption with the Wrecking Ball Tracer competition coming out from the Broncos. Lots of just diving in, making sure that that duo is on the same target, with that Discord coming out from Zenyatta and Brig able to protect Chosen. This is a high damage comp so long as target focus is the name of the game.
Absolutely, and you can see with those picks that came through, very nicely done by Boise State. They're able to take this initially. Utilizing the Zenyatta is another big factor here. I've been seeing this starting to work alongside with the Brig a little bit more frequently, just because of the extra amount of damage that it brings to the table and how you can have a significant amount of focusing fire. And to boot even further, with Map Merc on the Wrecking Ball, a very extensive comfort pick, it's going to be really challenging for Illinois to try and get back into this and just be able to counteract the damage.
Chosen actually is also on his comfort pick with that Zenyatta, so this is a composition that the Broncos used to use quite frequently and are happy to be able to bring it back. We have Chosen actually take out Marble before the fight even starts, so that's going to be a retreat for the side of Illinois. And it's interesting to see them picking out this Genji pick, considering Genji got his time in the light and was sent back into the cave by the devs not too long ago.
We can see already reaching that 50% marker. It's a lot of hesitation on entry here from Illinois. They're attempting to play a lot more of a methodical game to try and find value, but with the harassment from both Clear and Mattmerk, it's making it very challenging for them to get a clear point of entry. Even now, the separation from Danny closing in on that ultimate is going to be very helpful, especially with the patch changes. Nice pile drive onto 2. Supports are vulnerable, and Clear comes in with a swift pick.
You mentioned how they're being hesitant to get in here. One of the things that the Broncos have described this composition to me as is the runaway comp. So basically waiting for the Wrecking Ball and Tracer to be able to get in and get picks, while the core unit of that Cassidy, Zen, and Brigitte just play keep away and try to stay as far away from the enemy team as possible. And they were doing that quite nicely, staying over by Elephant with the rotation coming underneath by Left the Mega. So it's going to be harder if they aren't able to take a smart engage and get the right angles on that core unit, while at the same time avoiding the Wrecking Ball and Tracer.
You can see now desperate plays for the last 15%, aggressive forward, but there is that disc order by Chosen now with that Transcendence available. Mattmerk getting a little too big for the bridges at that point, since Marble is able to respond with a Zenyatta play of their own, but it's a matter of playing catch-up. It's all onto Illinois to get to this point and dominate. Since they've managed to get 2 picks thus far, it makes it much more reasonable for them to stay on this point, but there is a recontest option. Volleying comes in from Chosen, giving that extra support necessary with the damage. Clear brought down, unfortunately, by Silly, so there's no more of this backline harassment, and it's stripped away by Illinois.
Illinois had all 5 of their ults online, of Chosen just to keep that Genji Blade, as well as a Transcendence. The Broncos did end up dropping Deadeye as well as Rally from their Brigitte. With that being said, I believe that could have just been a let them expel ults and we'll retake with our own. Now, they're going to be down a huge ultimate in the form of that Rally.
And Clear, hiding in the back way, finding a vulnerable target, peppering damage in onto the Brig play, needing to stick very close. And this is, again, Illinois understanding this ebb and flow process of backing off, but unfortunately it's giving up too much space. And Boise State, at this point, has the chance with the Transcendence to mitigate and maintain the objective. Great takedown with that magnetic grenade to eliminate Clear, but everyone else falls in suit. Pile drive denies any escape here from Illinois with Danny, and that's going to be this round 1 in favor of Boise State.
Marble, unfortunately, tried to pop that chance to get into point. Even if there had been an opportunity to touch, Bagel would have had that whip shot online, so they would have just thrown him off the point to begin with. A valiant attempt nonetheless. We can see this last engage. We do end up losing Clear shortly after he uses that pulse bomb, because he engages and takes a couple too many hits without an Orb of Harmony on him. Clear tried to stay alive in that trance, does go down. As you mentioned, that magnetic grenade can be a deal breaker for Tracers, but nonetheless, the cleanup crew came in quickly for the Broncos.
Entering now onto Village, a more enclosed, capsulated area for this objective. Once you do maintain that position, it is a lot more challenging to enter in onto it. There is multiple high ground places that you can attack from, but now with an entirely different compositional SWAT. Clear going to come out on the Symmetra, no surprise, and looking to get to that point and take early dominance.
We did see Silly Phil also come out on the Symmetra just to give a quick TP out for their team and then immediately swap off blade and dash out of the point. With that being said, Clear on that Sim is going to be a huge difference. Those turrets are slowdown points for the Broncos, and that means easy pickings on point and able to maintain. However, they did lose Chosen, and that could put them in hot water.
Yeah, Mattmerk, again, showing the flexibility and their tanking capability with this Reinhardt now on that front line. That quick charge cancel with the swing around the side, able to eliminate the support play, denying it and only leaving one for the moment as everyone gets picked up as well. Bagel, as you mentioned it, even doing those tryouts, it is a well-worth opportunity, because I've been watching Bagel now for probably almost a couple of years, and it's just always a great thing to see when there's a Lucio in the matchup.
Most definitely, and he was denying a lot of that Wrecking Ball's utility, just booping him out of the way, and then the follow-up charge from Mattmerk to close down that kill on the Wrecking Ball just basically means that you're not getting as much value as most Wrecking Balls can because of the existence of a Lucio. Now we also have this teleporter online again for Clear, which is how they picked off the Zenyatta. So Marble now has to be checking their angles and making sure there isn't a sneaky TP coming up behind them.
That was a great bolo, though, from Danny, swinging around the side, dislodging them from the high ground. But recovery with Plato on that bridgeway, denying some of the visibility with the architecture so that they aren't easily picked up. And this rotation from Illinois, they have the right idea, but they unfortunately just aren't able to pull the trigger here. It's still Boise State on this main point, and the pile drive once again comes in, but now you can't enter. Plato with the Deadeye, and the reposition from the TP looks for the flank. Doesn't get the instant one shot, but it gets Marble low enough for Clear to pick them up, and especially the longer this fight goes, Clear's gonna have a field day, but miraculously Illinois State with a Deadeye of their own starts to turn it back.
And they also drop mines on point, just trying to LOS the Broncos off and make sure they can't get a foothold while they wait for their team. They did end up losing XOJ, and Ball has no choice but to retreat. Silly Billy manages to take out Chosen again. The junk Jay Silly plays coming in strong as Matt Merck charges into that high ground, looking to pick off this junk with the help of Bagel.
Yeah, definitely going to be coming from the top rope there. Matt Merck at about half health needs to be cautious until they do get themselves topped up from the supports. You can even see a little bit of difficult re-entry at this moment since they do have to wait for the supports, but with that teleporter coming through again, Photon Barrier divides this position in half so they can play a lot more effectively onto either side, denying the sight lanes from Illinois.
There was a slight contest from the ball, didn't last long. Junkrat Tire, which I didn't even hear the voice line to instigate, comes in, takes down one. Chosen goes down, forces out Barrier from Bagel to maintain possession of this point. Matt Merck is getting dangerously low. XOJ goes down to those sound waves. Marble does find Plato as well. Looks like this is going to be a touch-and-go situation for the Broncos. Instead, they're going to have to just reset after Bagel goes down.
Well, and the challenging part of this is those ultimates were spent by Illinois, and there was a lot of fighting going on that, yeah, Boise State did lose, but they were gaining a majority of the percentage. They stripped it away from Illinois undetected for a good 15+%, and now find themselves in a final fight territory if they strip it away from Illinois.
And they're also going to have Window and Deadeye for that final fight. Wrecking Ball's going to look to try and do some disruption and some stalling out with those landmines online just after a fight and a half. Marble is going to have Trance, which could help out, but it's not going to help their team survive with Deadeye if they're in line of sight of Plato.
And Clear down below, causing a deviation of attention. The Tracer, being such a nuisance for Illinois, has to abandon ship with one on the high ground down below to cause contention to keep it still gaining percent overall. Matt Merck gets one at least onto the Junkrat, but there is a trade for DPS. Now, this 4 versus 4 remains. Marble commits the Transcendence, but it's seconds too late. Danny goes down, no tank available, 7% remaining, and a Photon Barrier, and also this Amplification Matrix going to be giving some extra assistance here. And realistically, Illinois State is up a very, very tall mountain for them to turn this back around, and there's really nothing else you can do, especially with Plato playing this flank and catching off guard the people that are on top.
All that's left is Wrecking Ball and Baptiste, and Plato did end up picking up the Bab right before that Wrecking Ball went down. And as you mentioned it, Clear coming in on that Tracer, swapping off the Symmetra, just going in to be a disruptor was absolutely a huge advantage for the Broncos because it pulled the attention from the high ground to the low ground and gained them an entry point very easily.
Yeah, and the execution here is just very coordinated. It's these preparations and the planning going into the engagement. They already take the point initially with the Symmetra teleport versus having a little bit of a swap and adjustment. We did see a TP come out from Illinois, but it was this, a little bit more slow play. They swapped away from the Symmetra, so there's some catch-up mechanic. You have a little bit of that tempo adjustment. And honestly, with Boise State and them being able to get into such a dominant place right out the gate, it's things like that that really allow them to just continue to take these strides forward and always keep Illinois, who has been a little bit tense and pensive on entry, is only making that even more amplified.
I think Illinois needs to show a little bit more versatility in their composition picks because they stuck on that Wrecking Ball Zenyatta composition for way too long, even though it was being hard countered by what the Broncos were bringing out. They were just denying damage by walking out of line of sight. We're going to be going on to King's Row here, which could mean we could still see the Wrecking Ball coming out from Illinois Esports, but we'll have to wait and see what they choose to go. They are going to be, I believe, attacking first. Yes, they will be, and they're going to have that classic Widowmaker on the high ground looking for a quick pick. Not positive if it got scouted. Pretty sure it did.
Illinois, again, Opting back to that same composition as you said, not wavering away from it, feeling extremely confident to try and bring it into the mix here, but Clear alongside Matt Merck, still playing a very coordinated backline dive. Aggression forward. Marble actually gets a pickup. Nice partial volley into the melee, deleting at least the Tracer from this equation. But with that quick recovery and the multiple dashes, it shouldn't be too long before they get back to a full 5.
Matt Merck is going to chill out inside of Theater for a few moments, take a little bit of pepper damage from that Cassidy. He's going to roll through, pile drive. We did see that Zenyatta got extremely low. There was an anti-out as the Broncos are choosing to run the Ana, so a Kiriko swap would be advantageous for Illinois, but that means they'd have to make almost an entire comp swap. As Clear cleans up 2, Matt Merck does go down, but that's a fast return because Ball is so quick.
Not only that, Plato is actually putting out a lot of pressure. These arrows are landing and doing chunks worth of damage. That's why they're just approaching this ultimate as well. We see Clear, of course, getting it because of how great the flank is, but Plato's still doing a lot themselves in this very back line with the supports nearby.
Genji attempted to dash through and get some chip damage. They end up cleaning up Chosen, Bagel, and Plato. It is now just going to be the Wrecking Ball and Tracer. Both have quite a bit of sustain, but Ball did not have overshields ready to go. Plato's going to have to swap off of the Hanzo, giving up on charging that Dragon for an Archway chokehold. Instead, they're going to have to play for just standard what they were doing earlier, having a core unit and then having Wrecking Ball Tracer go in as a dynamic duo. They will have Nano and Mines online, which could signify a retake at Arch.
I talked about how well Boise State was doing defensively. The one thing that was interesting, though, is as we've gone into Kings Row specifically for Illinois, they had a great understanding of knowing how to take the fight away from the point so that they can still main objective presence to transition into the streets phase to break this type of control unfavored methodology that they've not been able to really do much with. So now that they've opened this up, I'm curious to see how it's going to work through with this payload mobile, especially with a couple of decent shots coming out from Boise State. A Dragon Blade from Silly Phil does get one. At least Danny's gone for now, but with that blade still active and a Transcendence to boot, Illinois still should get a decent distance around this bookstore.
Pushing up and getting that bookstore control is typically the make or break point for a lot of teams. We have Bagel just going undetected, so to speak, over here towards phone booth. A little bit of attention was given, but now the attention's coming far too late as the rest of the team is there. Chosen does go down, overstaying is welcome in that area. Now Clear trying to pepper in damage from main, takes down 1. We are down both supports. Matt and Clear take down the supports for Illinois. And Plato, Matt Merck clean up. Matt Merck goes down. That's going to be a 1 fight for Boise State.
And with still a little bit of space to go, granted it's very close to that checkpoint, but this angle is where you want to start really utilizing the high ground, seeing what you can get potentially through the catwalk, the window, maybe denying accessibility to Danny, or even at least giving intel where their positioning is so Boise State can continue maintaining this. Clear also going onto the 76 with the quick speed and mobility around that flanking position is going to be something really helpful as well as Matt Merck still holds the stairs.
Additionally, with the self-sustain, being able to put down a healing pad for Clear himself, just in case they lose LOS on Bagel or onto Chosen, they will have the opportunity to sustain, but we have a forced Transcendence after losing Matt Merck and Plato.
Yeah, very quick to execute from Illinois in this recovery. They feel a lot stronger and look more determined in the way that they're playing on this map of Kings Row versus the control map that we saw earlier, and having a much better understanding of the synergy and how their composition is playing, sticking to it despite us having some criticisms to the counterplay that was occurring in the previous map.
I am fine with being told I am wrong because they capped that second point with just over 4 minutes on the clock, and the Broncos finally changing things up. We have Bagel going over to that Brigida, trying to deny more utility out from Danny on the Wrecking Ball, and we'll be able to deal with Silly Philly just a little bit more as we see the Immortality come up and Matt Merck go down.
Little bit of a disjointed entry there. The supports were not completely in clean sightline to give the assistance for Matt Merck, but now there's an attempt to recover in this. The spawn advantage is still for Boise State, and Matt Merck now flexes to the 3rd. We see a Sigma tank selection now with that shield, having also the ability to mitigate a lot of that incoming damage, and even the accretion for a stun and lockdown onto Danny if they get very close, but it's not going to matter with this tactical visor, able to just hyper-focus down that Immortality field, flank for the supports, and what a Helix shot onto Marble in the chaos.
The trade was definitely worth it. Marvel being down that Discord orb, not being able to grant the extra damage for the side of Illinois means they have to back up and reset. They are going to be coming up on Blade as well as Deadeye and Transcendence though, so Broncos need to be careful. If Matt Merck lifts that Deadeye, he might put his team in hot water.
Blade was also really near this Bob, which is going to be extremely helpful. But that Blade taking down Bagel is really challenging. Wonderful recovery, though, from Matt Merck, making sure that there is no further hack and slash by that Blade onto Chosen, because that would have been devastating to work through with both supports down. Bob going to give a little bit more of an anchor here on the corner to make sure that they have the respawn.
Supports go down for the side of Illinois. 2 minutes and 20 seconds still remaining as Broncos have burned off about 2 fights worth of time. They've got 2.5 more to go, depending on how long this next engage takes. Bagel's going to have Rally online. They'll have the Graphitic Flux as well as Deadeye. They could combo any of those ultimates or use them solo. If they see Trance popped in lift from Matt Merck, then just pop Deadeye most likely is what we're going to see, because that's an insta-kill. You can't live that with Trance.
Curious to see how Illinois will enter into this. They're so low in health. Marvel, at this point, just having to hover their finger over that Transcendence until it's the most optimal time to enter in. And Boise State really just have total control of this corner, not really taking much chip damage at all. Plato really being the only one as the Wrecking Ball harasses, but Chosen down below keeping a very great coverage to deny anybody's visibility onto it. That Discord, the first time that we see the focus, and XOJ actually gets the shutdown.
We're going to see Danny go down after that trade, and Silly Philly goes down as well. So Broncos, as far as manpower, are in the lead, forcing another reset out from Illinois, losing your ball and your Genji. And we're going to see Silly Phil swap over to the Hanzo. RNGesus is about to take the wheel, and the Broncos need to start checking their heads and their angles.
Yep, Plato, once again, having another Bob in a minute and about a half, I would say, a little bit, maybe just above that, because of how much value, not only the dynamite, but just the sheer raw damage that they're putting into the opponent. Matt Merck takes down Silly Phil, despite them looking to make this change. 45 seconds, and Boise State has taken space. What a sleep by Chosen.
Danny almost goes down, but not enough damage was pelted onto them to send them back to the Shadow Run for a few minutes. We have Nano online by Chosen. Clear has Deadeye. We have Bob. We almost have another Flux coming in for the side of Illinois. They're going to have Mines, Deadeye, as well as that window. They might be able to get Hanzo ult as well if this fight drags on long enough. The question is, who ults first to win this fight?
There needs to be a pick out from Illinois early. Hopefully either onto Plato or Clear, which actually happens. They lose Bob. They still have ultimates to work with, but again, they're working with reduced numbers. A Nano, aggressive play forward with free firing. It's a shooting gallery as the Flux from Matt Merck is wonderfully timed. Brilliant positioning by Clear. This is a massive strategic play. When you talk about a nano-boosted Cassidy going into a Flux despite you losing a player early, well-rounded gameplay all in all.
Well, you got to think about it in terms of what are you paying in that fight, because the Broncos, you have $5 in your hand and then you lose one player, you have 4. Other team is now up by $1. The response is you have to use an ult to bring you back up to that $5 mark and an additional ult to put you at 6, and that grants you the victory, so long as you do it smartly. And this nano boost here on the Cassidy was the go button, hit W, we remove our S keys for our Clear.
You know, speaking of $4, if you went to a grocery store and you had to buy a candy bar, what candy bar would you buy with that $4?
Oh, you know those big Hershey's cookies and cream bars?
Yes, I do.
Did you one of those?
I have not got one of those in a very long time, but that actually sounds really good.
Those are so
Derailing
addicting.
for a moment, but the hunger in the tummy was starting to think about, you know, what could I get for $4 since you brought that to the table? But as we're now going to have the swap asides, curious to see what type is brought to the table defensively by Illinois, and seeing if they can have a decent hold here against Boise State, who really did understand entirely how to play this defensive position, especially when it came to that furnace to deny completion for Illinois.
They do have a slight change in their composition, choosing to drop the Genji in favor of the Junkrat, and then Danny swapping over off the ball to the Sigma to match Matt Merck on the Sig. The question is now which tank is going to be taking and shutting down angles better for their own team. Clear trying to get an early pick, doesn't find anything. It's going to have to swap over, and they're going to pick up the mantle of the Ashe, as both of our DPS have swapped their heroes, but nonetheless are very respected on both.
EXO very cautious in how they move back into that since they were quickly tapped twice. Clear goes down though. Marble has actually stepped up quite a bit here on this support role and has brought in a significant amount of damage from this Zenyatta. On a couple of occasions, we've seen 3 eliminations in the previous side swap, and now doing it once again on the defense.
Clear is back online. No one for the Broncos went down after they ended up losing Clear, which is great. Now the question is, can Bagel go toe-to-toe with that Zenyatta coming out from Illinois? It looks like he will, getting assist on Danny, but Plato goes down. The DPS for the Broncos kind of falling like lemmings left and right. Will they be able to maintain a foothold here? They will with that Discord Orb again doing some work. EXO did end up picking up Clear, who chose to swap onto the Bastion?
Yeah, Discord plus Bastion equal OP. It just brings me back to the time before even Overwatch 2 when it was with Northwood and constantly utilizing this Bastion play, and we're seeing a little bit of those shenanigans as well with Clear, who we've actually seen done this on a couple of occasions, even despite the change in Overwatch 2. It really can bring a lot of value, and if they have a sightline onto that discorded target, they will be instantaneously vaporized.
The funny part is that instead of that we have Clear on the Bastion, is that Plato actually made sure that he was rank 1 on Bastion last season and is currently trying to do that again on ladder. So him not flexing his prowess here is upsetting me, but I understand it. I respect you giving the mantle over to Clear.
I'm pretty sure it's more, instead of giving the mantle over, it's Clear saying, let me just show you up a bit, Plato. Like, don't worry. Like, that's what I want. I'm going to be the rank 1 Bastion as they come out. Still continuing to focus fire through this archway, one of the most challenging to attempt to push through if the defense can hold strong. Deadeye does get one, but a counter flux denies ExoJ any further damage up front, and Clear continues to just stay calm, cool, and collective as Plato revisits and rejoins with this Hanzo.
We have Bagel with that trance online. Silly Phil is going to have the tire, which could be something that ends up sending many of the Broncos to the Shadow Realm. I mean, Trance isn't going to save you. It's going to come down to Plato, Matt Merck, Clear, and maybe Chosen or Bagel all doing a little bit of damage on it and identifying where it's at quickly. If they're in flux and tires manage to get tire high enough from Illinois, that could be a rough situation, as no one's going to survive that if they cannot burn the tire quickly.
Yeah, Silly Phil has been able to get value with the Rip Tires the times that we've seen it. There was almost a counter accretion onto the Flux from Danny, which made it a lot more challenging for them to do anything with it. You hear the Rip Tire still working through and is denied. Chosen gets the takedown onto it, and Clear comes in with the ult to make sure that they will reach this checkpoint and have 5 minutes to work with to reach that golden box of victory just around the second junction.
I thought 4 minutes was impressive, coming in with 5 minutes for the Broncos after capping point 2. Even more impressive, so we're most likely going to see the Broncos get it all the way, but I'm trying not to cast or curse it, as we've got Plato very close to these dragons. Are we going to deny space, or are we going to pick up kills with it in combination with the Flux is my question.
Oh, Plato had the right idea with that vision, but unfortunately, the second they took their eyes away from that wall, instantly Silly Phil manages to shut them down. So that will be just a nice reset here. Matt Merck going to wait for the rest of the squad. They've got more than enough time to work with. They have at least 3 ultimates, well, 1 to be present, but 2 more to come. And we're actually going to have Clear swap over, sacrifice a little bit of the ultimate economy to go back onto this Cassidy to have the hit scan and also the magnetic grenade.
We do have Dragons and Lift online for the side of the Boise State team. Marble has to be the one to pop ult, as well as that Immortality might have to both be expelled here in order for them to live through this ultimate. Ult came a little bit late, as did the Immortality, allowing them to live. We do see that Matt Merck is going to pick up Silly Phil. There was an anti. I don't think it landed on anyone because there was a shield to deny it. Now Matt is pushed up quite far, ends up going down because they're out of LOS of their supports.
And Zoolander making sure that they get some trouble for their efforts, as it's a cleanup here. This is still the first of many more fights Illinois is going to be have to deny access for Boise State. There's a shutdown for now. Spawns are still a little bit in favor of Illinois since it's closer towards their proximity. So if they do lose one, it's not absolutely detrimental. But with these volleys, they also have to keep a watchful eye because Bagel's going to land these shots.
Speaking of spawns, Marble just got back, and ExoJ is going to manage to take down Clear with some assistance of the Hanzo. We do have Nano online, the nade landing just a little bit too late to keep Matt Merck alive, and that's another reset for the Broncos. This time bank that they had is now getting down to 2 minutes and 30-second mark, meaning half the time that they started with has now elapsed.
And this is why the final stretch of Kings Row can be so challenging. This corner and just understanding how to play the high ground and also those couple of narrow corridors to counteract and get these initial picks. It's happened twice now. The Flux gonna lift clear into the air. Might be a little bit frightful, but falls right into the Dragon Strike. But there is Bagel waiting with that Transcendence to make sure that they are topped up and healed through the Flux damage and the Dragon Strike. Clear gets 2 following shortly after due to the boost from Nano. And this will be a very great way to get these last few meters, with Illinois now making emergency swaps just to even touch it.
We saw earlier the exact same play brought out from the Broncos onto Illinois was proved to be unfruitful. But the difference made was the fact the Broncos paid one extra thing in this fight to sustain and come out on top, and that was using that Nano once again onto the Cassidy. Help them come out on top of this one. They do finish out this ABC match against Illy Esports, coming out cleanly, 2 on top.
Yeah. Illinois, again, they had some moments where they did find themselves very coordinated, but, you know, still, Boise State playing their game as they have, strategically understanding their win condition and knowing how to effectively counteract the compositions that were brought to them.
And speaking of playing your game for Boise State Esports is always looking for talented players, production, and broadcast talent. Top talent, along with good grades and eligibility, can earn scholarships as well. Sign up today by visiting boisestate.edu/esports for more information. So
it's exciting to see how week 1's playing out.
I'm excited to see how it continues as well, considering there are some changes that are going to be coming today, so to speak. Not so sure about how many changes, but some things might get fixed and some egos might get checked. But with that being said, our first match of the day is going to wrap up with the Broncos coming out on top 2-0, and we're going to take just a quick break, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back here in just a few minutes.
It's the end of a good day's work in Idaho. Time to punch out. Time to check in and catch up. Time to remind ourselves that what we work for isn't a paycheck. It's to make the good things we have even better. So here's to your good day's work. Idaho Central Credit Union. We believe money is a thing. It's not everything.
Growing up in Idaho, we have certain rules we live by. First rule, camouflage never goes out of style. And always buckle up. Seatbelts save lives. That's a rule we can all live by.
You take really strong players from disparate communities and you put them together on teams with expert coaching.
So you mean to tell me by all the hands in the room, everybody in here is that top 2%?
It's ultimate, it's a 1v1, it proceeds to the last moment!
It's not every day that you're a kid like me and you get to have this experience.
Something, it gets one.
This boot camp is really about finding out every weakness.
There's no such thing as a big mistake at this level.
I have people in the crowd there cheering my name on. I have to give them a show.
That feeling of just being up on stage and having a whole crowd of people, it's unbeatable.
1v1, but... Oh, why would you pick him?
I love this. I want to do this every day.
You didn't make a choice, so you were just looking at things.
If you want to go pro, sometimes you have to make sacrifices.
Jump up and down, you're a crowd, you're casters. It's a transformational experience.
That was a light switch, and now I see what it's all about.
A lot of players here right now are caught up in winning their tournaments 5-10 years down the road. They're not going to remember who won.
Boise State Esports Arena. You're watching our coverage of our Boise State Broncos Overwatch team, and we're going to shift gears away from ABC over to NACE Collegiate Overwatch. Boise State is going to be taking on Texas A&M San Antonio. While these teams don't have a whole lot of rivalry history, their former coach for Broncos did hail from Texas, so they have to flex a little bit and make sure they take down their beloved Shifty's alma mater. With that being said, it's still going to be Rich Rad and RD Nerdy Bird Rain on desk calling all the action for you after we just got off of that very heavy-handed victory for the Broncos against Illinois Champlain. How do you think they're feeling going into this next game?
I mean, when you've got a game played as formidably and as dominantly as we did see, and extremely coordinated outside of those few very micro plays, they got to be feeling really good. I mean, especially when you're going against, like you mentioned, a school of the alma mater from previously. Like, they definitely want to put on a show.
Most definitely. I can't argue with you on that because Shifty is someone that is very much beloved by a lot of the older players here, myself included. I look up to him and still speak to him on a regular basis, but giving that slight little, we got to just show you up just a tiny bit and beat your alma mater, definitely is something they're going to be coming in with, but hopefully their egos don't get the best of them going into this game.
Yeah, and Texas A&M, I mean, we've seen, I believe it's just their new director as well, Aaron, that came in and overseeing their university specifically for coaching and staffing. Really curious to see how they're going to be fending off into this as well, and what Boise State's going to be able to face off against them, being newer to the mix in the last recent year.
Well, some things that aren't new is actually going to be the tips coming to the Broncos in the form of Doc's keys to the game for Overwatch in particular. Doc's keys for Overwatch are understand your comp and play style, focus on each fight, get good ult value. The objective is more important than the kills. Doc's keys are brought to you by Drop-In Gaming. Drop-In Gaming is a premier online platform for gamers who seek competition. Play your favorite games to win cash and prizes through free and paid entry matches and tournaments. Whether you're new to the scene or a seasoned veteran, Drop-In Gaming has the right games and competition for you. To begin your competitive journey, sign up at dropingaming.com. Now, that being said, going up against a team that we're not super duper familiar with, we can be familiar with the lineup here. Before we jump completely in, we're going to have Kel, Plato, Goblin, Chosen, and Bagel for today's lineup. A little bit of change up from what we saw earlier. We're not going to have Clear in on this first game, and we're not going to have Matt Merck. Today's lineups are brought to you by Count. Count Identity Trust Global Network delivers real-time fraud prevention, account protection, and enables personalized customer experiences for more than 9,000 leading brands. Considering we're having this slight change up, Kel is most likely going to be on tank, though we've seen him kind of shift over onto that the DPS role in the past. We've also seen Plato on tank, but do you anticipate anything different specifically because Kel is going to be in the mix?
The biggest thing that I'm curious is about the Ramatra, because the last time that I got to see Kel in the previous weeks was this very consistent usage of the Ramatra. Now with the patch notes, we had mentioned it earlier when it came to the ABC broadcast segment of this, that is something curious and how that's going to adjust the type of play style and mechanical skill that's going into these matches. And that's something I'm keeping a watchful eye on. Also, especially as you mentioned, if Kel does look to try and waver away from the tank role in and of itself.
Well, it's up to the Broncos on stage to determine who is going to be playing tank for this first map, which is going to be Lijiang Tower. Not positive which of the 3 sub-map rotations will end up on. We're getting some beautiful coverage here of the control center, but we could end up on any of them. If we end up on Night Market, I anticipate the Sim TP strat, possibly with a Sigma. If we're on Gardens, most likely a Wrecking Ball composition. But I do know for a fact that despite we've seen Kel on the Ramatra, his Sigma is quite the force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I did get to see a little bit of that, especially, I think it was, I want to either say, it wasn't Circuit Royal, it was a specific map that's just eluding me at the moment, but it's just this understanding of that ebb and flow, and also landing some significant accretions that were really denying on entry from some of the either other tank or DPS trying to find opportunities and value with a pick in this front position, and I'm really excited to see if we do have that Sigma play, what that's going to look like. We already got to see a little bit of it from Matt Merck earlier, and a very dominant forward pressing aggressive style, and seeing if Kel is, in that same lineage.
Kel is actually a very strong ult tracker as well, so that is why he's so good at countering ultimates from other teams. He can eat Zarya grabs like there's no tomorrow, and he's also great at using accretion to deny another Sigma's ultimate. But Kel is actually going to be rolling out on this Reinhardt, so the Broncos are choosing not to go with the Jay Silly, but the Sojourn for Plato, and then Goblin on the Mei. Lyric and Chosen actually coming in to round out the support roster for them as well. So Bagel is out, Lyric is in on the Lucio.
A lot of bobbing and weaving, denying access to the fire strikes, which this time around you do have a couple. Great wall, though, to divide early. Goblin getting a lot of presence up front, going to isolate the few away, but that shield is active to deny the freeze, but Plato on the Sojourn gets 2 and brings so much to this, and a second wall denies the escape for Texas A&M.
And it looks like we are having some slight connection difficulties. Someone's computer did die at the end of the day. Technology is not always our best friend, though it can be very helpful. The interesting thing, though, is that was definitely a show of sportsmanship because someone dying after fight has already started. Typically, you have to wait for this fight to end, point to cap, and you can pause and let them come back in. But other than that, we didn't see any DC right on screen, so the Broncos might just do the polite thing and sportsmanlike thing and allow them to fully reset the map and begin again. But at the end of the day, it looks like that was going to be won by the Broncos.
Yeah, it was leading much more heavily into the Broncos phase. But, you know, there's always some greatness when it comes to the sportsman-like thing. It reminds me of, like, World of Warcraft whenever you're in an arena battle, and if, like, one of your players DCs, you just, like, 1v1 the other person, or, like, you 2v2 the other person, just wait for the other one. So that's just instantly what I think of when you have a lot of the, you know, sportsman-like playing, especially in the collegiate realm. I mean, we all want to make sure that we're respecting the others, and that's something that, of course, Boise State is always looking to do when, you know, they have their foundation built for integrity and how they play. But as we do wait for this to get back into it, again, it was already out the gate with the Reinhardt. Interesting to see that a little bit of an adjustment versus what I thought would have maybe been more of the Ramatra, or even potentially having some uniqueness with the Wrecking Ball, but with the Sigma being such a dominant force with the shield, understanding that type of methodology behind it, the Reinhardt is still, I think, a fit that works for Kel, and I'm curious to see how that's going to continue showing on screen for the broadcast, because I'd like to see how Kel plays it.
I want to see Kel with the Lyric on that Lucio in his back pocket, just both of them hitting that W key and not being scared by anything they see, because when there's a Reinhardt who has infinite speed boost with enough healing coming out from the other support, they virtually are unkillable and have Earthshatter off cooldown every fight. So raiding your backlines would be an understatement if Kel gets the utility necessary to do that.
Mm-hmm. The other part of it, too, outside of just discussing the tank dynamic, is also the wall placement, specifically from the main. There has been a lot more gain and value from Boise State and what they've brought to it versus this almost like attempted, like, divide the room in sense. There was the main doorway on that upper middle portion where you had Texas A&M focusing to try and keep Sojourn towards the outside and allowing them to be away and rotate around to the backside. But even then, when you have a high mobility champ like that and is going to be able to get a decent sight line, especially if they've charged up that railgun, you're really not bringing any value and more so need to deny access to the healers versus the DPS.
And that definitely seemed like what what Goblin was trying to go for there. That first initial wall forcing out the May cryo, and they were absolutely undeterred when they realized there was a wall behind them. We saw both Kel and Goblin just hit the gas and keep going. They did not care. They forced cryo, and they're like, that's our go button. No sustain left for that May. We're deleting you and sending you to the Shadow Realm. So hopefully, once we go into the start of the next fight, we'll see that May use their utility a little bit smarter, and their team is faster at breaking those walls. Otherwise, it's going to be wall and mall comp until the end of time coming out from the Broncos.
Credit to Texas A&M, though, because there was that understanding with the shield that once the cryo freeze was down, that you were going to get locked down. Plato playing aggressively, the May continuing to isolate that one player for the pickup, but that shield constantly being utterly swiveled just to give coverage, to deny that full CC to come through. So there is some disengaged potential. And then we, of course, had the disconnect, which, you know, kind of snowballed to that direction. But as we're looking to get back into this now for our first round of this control map, we're going to take it again.
Thankfully, whomever's in charge of the lobby is aware of the functions necessary to force the reset on the right map, something I still cannot manage to do to this day, because the RNG of Overwatch always hates me and I end up getting Night Market 5 times in a row.
5, 4.
I mean, Night Market's a great place, but, you know, as long as we are able to cycle back to the same thing, it's like a deja vu moment. We'll hit the rewind, A-B repeat, and we'll see if it's going to be just a mirror of what we've already had occur, or maybe Texas A&M has a different methodology behind it, and they have been able to divide away from that initial stairway, but that wall, again, still looking to deny that main port, but Plato down below again like clockwork, and actually is shut down.
They did force the May cryo early, but Chosen and Plato both going down. That means a reset for the Broncos. We might see Goblin try to get a little bit of chip damage in here. We have Lyric backing off to make sure that both of them can get out alive. Kel coming off a respawn is just now coming out of those gates. Back at the doorway, they're going to be able to deny a lot of space, and both walls were expelled. That is a go button for the Broncos to push through here, as they had a vertical, perpendicular to the door wall set up to try and gain space, but now both May walls are going to be back online, and it's used very early, but Kel is down again, and Broncos struggling to get a foothold.
Yeah, there was just not enough healing throughput to keep Kel alive in that corner, really threading the needle to keep that doorway occupied. But now, with Boise State unfortunately losing that initial position, they've got to use the wall to try and separate Wanter. Able to deny it. The Earth Shatter's actually canceled until, oh wait, they get the Shatter to come through. They were knocked into the corner, so they weren't elevated enough to reset it. A Blizzard also tossed in but goes down. This is absolute chaos in this small corner, but Boise State weathers the storm.
I'm going to be honest with you, I did think that that Earth Shatter was denied. I thought Kel might have charged the Reinhardt. I think he did nonetheless, but because he was already in the air and jumped, he got the lift as opposed to the knockback from that charge, which was just unfortunate.
And now Boise State getting a hold of the door, doing the same aggressive action that Texas A&M has already. Earth Shatter available. This one's gonna get paid dirt onto 2. The Kitsune Rush comes out. Is there enough for Texas A&M to recover? Spidey with the sound barrier gives them a massive shield coverage to re-enter onto this, with Boise State having to instantly fall back, retreating with the Kitsune Rush to re-enter. It's this ebb and flow we talked about a little bit earlier in understanding just so well how to play this effectively, especially when you have chosen getting that Kitsune Rush to counteract against Goliathan.
I really think what put the Broncos ahead in that last fight was disengaging with the ant speed from Lyric and identifying that if they got out of that Kitsune Rush, went back to the point and used their own, they would have the advantage because the rush from the enemy Kiriko would be completely out of the way. They burned Suzu as they rounded that last corner too, so there was no hope for survival. It's going to be another Shatter coming online from both the Reinhardts. Kel just slightly ahead. Are we going to see a big Shatter again, or is there going to be a Suzu to save everyone from Goliath, who absolutely clutched up the last fight for the side of Illinois despite them not coming out on top?
Yeah, Kel has managed to lap Wanter, and they take this next fight, and now it's desperation once again for Texas A&M. Kel is going to hold this corner and once again instantly try and get an Earth Shatter, as we saw earlier, through the doorway to make sure that they just prevent any sort of turn back here from Texas.
Hold and door, the standard strat when you have a May and a Reinhardt here on control center. Coming up for Texas A&M, they're going to be close to beat. They have another Kitsune Rush, they have Shatter, they have Mail, but the first Shatter is going to be from Kel, who picks up one. Goliath goes down, Capsane goes down, Lyric and Goblin go down, so there's trades, but now to make up for it, we have Overclock getting popped here by our Sojourn, and the Lucio Spidey goes down.
That quad stun feels so bad when you have to just break this doorway and get to point, and you know you don't have your Reinhardt close enough to give that shield coverage. That's just a feels bad moment, and at this point now that round is over. We're gonna get a replay of it here again. You'll see Wanter play a little bit further forwards. The Shatter comes out just behind, knowing that there is no protective shielding to deny it. Easy pickings for everyone on Boise State. They lose a couple in the return Shatter, but the damage is already done when everyone is on their back.
And Kel rectified his previous mistake. He didn't get the Kiriko the last time he Shattered, so she Suzu'd and kept them all alive. This time he said, I'm making sure you're in my line of sight, and Shattered her as well, and instantly turned on her to make sure that she could not live through that Earth Shatter.
Keep it going.
Now entering onto Night Market. And going to still have the same comp except for Goblin. Not going to be sticking with the May play and actually opting for the Torbjorn to see how that's going to be helpful for the composition. And we've seen Goblin do this on a couple of occasions and play very well, but you know, Sojourn just does Sojourn things despite the patch notes that we've seen, and can really instantly take someone down if you are not keeping a watchful eye.
Lyric got a boop on the May and then used that boop again on the Lucio. Didn't get an environmental, but still sent Lucio back to the spawn. As far as ultimates go in this next fight, it's still going to be pretty neutral unless Kel gets a lot of value here, or Plato. Plato's building ult charge faster than Loop, and Kel is just slightly ahead of Wanter.
That was close. Goliath really playing with their life. Because now it's already 20+%. Holding both of these junctions. The doorway easily managed by Cal. Fire strikes being repeatedly forced onto Wanter, who is now going to look for a reposition, but doesn't get the mobility fast enough as Speedy goes down. They've lost the utility, and they're sitting ducks here.
And they burn Suzu as well. Goblin goes in and picks up Loop. Goblin goes in and gets Goliath, and Plato gets Capsaicin. Goblin has Molten Core online. Plato has Overclock chosen with Kitsune Rush. Beat soon to follow. Roughly equal. It's just Capsaicin has ult as opposed to that Sojourn. Cal, though, is going to have Earth Shatter well before Wanter.
Which are they going to lead with first? If we're going to... The Kitsune Rush is going to be the hardest part here for Texas A&M because they want to use that more so... Oh, nice block, though, with the Shatter. Beautifully done. That's one of many still to be worried about as you have Plato from on high with the Molten Core of Goblin. Despite one ultimate going out the window. Despite it, everything else works.
That was still 3 ults from the Broncos, and they only have their support ults. And we lose Plato because he overstayed his welcome. Goliath was the only one to spend their ultimate. We're going to use Kitsune Rush to equalize, as well as B coming out from the side of Texas A&M. We hear May Blizzard come out. Kel is going to be frozen. They had a lot of overshield, but they may not survive this. They do, as Goliath and Luke go down to Lyric and Chosen.
That ability to keep Kel alive was disgusting. I give major props to both Chosen and Lyric for the coordination of the ultimates and denying anyone from getting the final killing blow. The Suzu just effortlessly tossed out with only a micro health of remaining on Cal. And they're going to be able to take this. Lyric going to get the play of the game. And once again, they're carrying over that momentum.
Ooh, a double boot from Lyric. Of course, that's got to be play of the game. The environmentals are heavily valued by this game, other than the hit Q and win button.
I mean, again, that's the 99 into the overtime. If that doesn't happen, that looks a lot different. I mean, granted, there's still a majority of Boise State still holding it, but that could have been a lot more lengthy. And, you know, major hats off. Credit to Boise.
I got to give full props definitely over towards Lyric. You might end up being our top 5 play of the game or our player of the game later today. But the top 5 plays are brought to you by the Idaho Army National Guard, who's a proud supporter of Boise State Esports. The Idaho Army National Guard has more than 10 jobs offering $20,000 in bonuses and your degree of choice paid for. The Idaho Army National Guard is the best team out there. Reach out to them on Twitch at iGuard Gaming. So I think the next map is going to be hybrid. Do you anticipate it being Scrims Row?
At this point, yeah. It's like when it comes to Collegiate, it never wavers. There is a very, very low percentile chance of probability that it goes away from it. And with what we already saw again earlier from ABC, Kings Row is a very dominant place. Granted, the player's adjustment. I would love to see Cal continue to play the way that they have been and just having this tempo understanding of their opponent, finding the value that they are.
One thing to note, though, is that though it was out for a bit due to a bug, it was brought back this season. It is officially back. We do have Numbani in the mix.
Ah, yes. I mean, we could see that. I would like to see Numbani. I just like to see anything other than Kings Row. I just want to see anything other than Kings Row. So, oh man, Numbani. I haven't seen that in so long. Let's be frank, everybody. That would just be nice to see that instead of the bell clock in the darkness with the moon overhead. Though they have changed the lighting on it, so that's also a part of it too.
Yeah, they've changed it.
No, go ahead.
I think they changed it to what, Twilight-ish?
Yeah,
maybe?
Twilight. Yeah.
Oh, so actually, I think we have 2 payloads here. It could be hybrid, it could be escort, but I'm pretty sure it's still going to be hybrid. We could alternatively see Blizzard World.
Yeah, that's another one too. And again, the key things when it at least comes to either of them realistically is understanding the high ground play and knowing how to transition between those specific points. When we talk about Blizzard World specifically, just, in a hypothesis now, there's a lot of those major high ground positions that you can use to axle and anchor on. But why do I even bother? I don't need to. We're going to Kings Row. You can see with the camera pan that we're going here. So anything that I've said is null and void because it doesn't matter because we're never never leaving this rock.
I mean, in the days of old, Kings Row, typically you had one composition for first point, one composition for second, and then you swapped to another composition for third, and you really relied on snowballing your first fight into your second fight and dumping ults to make the comp swap here before you completely turned this corner around Bookstore for the second comp, and then going into the third, again, rounding that second corner after you get the checkpoint on point 2. But now, with the way Overwatch has gone, there really isn't a whole lot of composition swaps that are necessary, which is why I would prefer to see Blizzard World, because you can force comp swaps on that map a little bit more heavy-handedly.
And as we enter in onto this one, with the massive elevation and just multiple little channel ways that you can work through to find value, it'll be interesting to see if we keep a little bit more of a harassment-based type of composition with, you know, Matt Merck and having the adjustment and comp specifically for Matt Merck. There's a lot of this wrecking ball that likes to be worked in with a tracer play, you know, this chip kind of, you know, dive bombish play onto the flanking angle. But with how Kel has been playing, very stalwart, just stoic type of gameplay overall. And I talked about elevation, and I think I see in the wings there a Pharah play, which I'm actually really excited to see.
If this is the Broncos on defense, which I'm a little shocked by because sometimes they like to attack first, you do get an extra fight. With that being said, it's most likely Goblin on that Pharah. I don't know which one of the supports was forced into the Mercy jail. We'll have to wait and see. We also saw J Silly, so double splash damage projectile with no hit scan could be taken advantage of by the other team if they're willing to take the Pharah duel. And we have Kel on the wrecking ball. Excited to see this.
Mobility. There's at least something, but isn't paired up with the Tracer as we saw earlier. Chosen gets an early shutdown though, which makes this a little bit more helpful for Boise State. Goblin boosted. I'm coming in to give some support, Chosen.
Chosen begging for some tender love and care and some help. And Goblin says, give me a minute. We did also res Plato, so res is going to be on cooldown for a wee bit. Goblin is headhunting right now, identifying those loud cowboy boots coming from the Cassidy as the rest of the team is still in main. If they pick off this cast quickly, they can just go back into the main area and force everyone back. We do see Goblin gets stuck. And Mercy can't res that. They have completely egressed into the area where that corpse is laying. Now this team has to make a huge adjustment as high ground is now in favor of the side of Texas A&M.
This is where you can say it was a little reckless for Goblin, playing in such an enclosed area. You're chasing after that, even though you did have the assistance of Kel. Nice recovery despite that, able to stabilize and really play these angles. And also, Lyric constantly maneuvering quickly to top everybody back up and keep Kel thriving, especially since they have this minefield already available.
It's really important for anyone that is familiar with the Mercy changes. You have to be topping off people. You can't just be pocketing one human being. Otherwise, you aren't going to get enough of your own passive healing to stay alive. And so that's very smart. As we see Luke go down almost instantly. Not sure if they were an invis and got scouted. But I want to see more from Loop and taking smarter engages here. As we lose Plato, so Eagle Eyes spawns in favor of Texas A&M.
Yeah, the usage of Loop is a very interesting one because, again, it counteracts the Wrecking Ball, which is great, but they've not really been able to bring a lot of value thus far. And they're still looking to approach this EMP as well. The timing on the hacks are occurring, but there's just no follow-up. And this is why Kel is able to get out. Goblin has been eliminated. They're going to pass over these 2 ticks before they look for a contention on the 3rd and final one. Kel's actually going to go in because the nano boost is there, and the minefield makes it even more formidable because that's one of the big things that also changed in that 7th patch note, is that it's a half a second more rapid in activation upon releasing the mine. So that pile drive makes it a lot more effective for you to actually get at least 1 pick with it.
The scary and sad thing is Spidey is now in the Ajax club. Any Lucio main, myself included, has done it before. Got killed in ult animation. We're gonna have Plato from behind drop the tire very close to the enemy team. Pick up 2, pick up a 3rd with the help of Kel, and they're sent back to the spawn.
That was free. But, you know, hey, it happened quick enough. It allows you to get back as a full team. You got 50 seconds, final attempt into this, and they have the EMP. That is the win condition here. You need to gain value on this, or everything that you've just invested into the Sombra is null and void.
If they can get an EMP with a big shatter, there won't be anything to keep the side of the Broncos alive. They did expel the Lucio sound barrier. Lyric does find Capsaicin. Winter finds Goblin. Goblin was screaming on stage earlier when he first TP'd in because he was met face with a lot of damage because he went straight to the high ground. Trap is triggered. This is an opportunity now for our Junkrat here in Plato to find a pick, but can't find anything just yet. They're peppering damage on the Rhine, focusing him as opposed to focusing the support. Sombra gets low. They finally turn their attention to the Kiriko as Lyric goes down. That might be too little too late. Rhine is here. The supports are coming back for the side of Texas A&M. Tracer finds Plato, but Wanter goes down to Chosen and Goblin.
I was just going to say, they finally used the EMP, but the problem is Boise State is everywhere. They are not clustered together to really gain maximum potential with that. The mines get even more. The Reinhardt shield is spinning to deny them. They're waiting for that chance to just get the last remaining couple of pickups. Melee as well for Chosen. This is just, I think, a little bit of a misread here when it comes from Texas A&M. I do like the idea of the Sombra and what it can do to counteract the Wrecking Ball. But the problem is that if you're not finding that value early enough, and then you've invested that much time, and then we had probably 30 seconds worth of a fight going on towards the end of that where the EMP never showed its face because everyone from Boise State was so distant from each other, you won't get any value from it. It feels a little unbalanced right now of what you want to do against Boise State because they're playing so well. But I'm at least going to give Texas A&M credit for trying to work outside of the box.
I mean, Sombra also did get a buff on damage, so the EMP charges quite fast, and after hack, that's a lot of damage to take to the face. I understand that the Broncos were playing very spread out. That was the name of their composition. It's not bunch up and play brawly. It's spread out and create chaos, as we mentioned earlier. But finding value in an ultimate doesn't mean you have to EMP all 5 members of the team. Find 1, find 2, find a support, get Chosen in the EMP and delete him. Get Lyric in the EMP and delete him. You take away a lot of value by removing just one person. Who cares if you can't find everybody? You were in overtime, you had EMP, there was 2 people by you, Loop, and you could have done it.
Yeah, because the part of it is when you're in that situation, which you're extremely correct, where you can try and find a valuable pick even just onto 1. But because of how distant they were, and I guarantee you the weight that you have on the Sombra play of like, who am I actually going to get value with? And then also, am I going to be able to capitalize on it? There's so many variables to that, and just ultimately never was able to really get a foothold. As we take the swap of sides, you do have an adjustment, though. The Sombra's still in the mix for Texas A&M, but it's not going to be Loop that's captaining that ship today, and they opt to go onto the Cassidy.
It's going to be Capsaicin instead, who the Broncos said Capsaicin is definitely a great player, but Loop goes down very quickly. They're going to go harass Plato. Plato goes down. We have a duel happening. Kiriko forced to use jump, identified where she went immediately. She gets deleted and squished. Lucio is now left standing, and the Broncos are going to be able to get a few people on. Sombra goes down at the last second. That's easily the first 2 ticks, so there isn't a quick re-engage here from the side of Texas A&M.
They will not be able to. Kel keeps great denial. Goblin as well with a couple of shots. No ability to come back here for contention. That is going to be 2 maps now to 0 over Texas A&M, and finding themselves on a match point to make this also a 3-0.
I think this is going to be that cheeky tire coming out of movie theater that we saw in the first half of the defense. Yep. Dangerously close to the enemy team, but they had nothing to sustain through the tire, and then comes through with the help of their Wrecking Ball and cleans up the crew.
It's those little fun plays with Junkrat. I enjoy playing Junkrat personally because there's just so much chaos that you can bring to it. It doesn't feel like you can do it as often, but right now Boise State able to work it into the mix of their composition to play to their strengths. They know that Kel is able to cause so much disruption. They also had that adaptation with the pharmacy composition to play that elevated, high ground. So there's just multiple different angles of attack. And then it brings that proposed question of, do we try and focus the Pharah or play the ground game? And when you're ever in a position like that, it's never an easy decision.
There also was a lot of character swaps coming out from Goblin. We saw him start out on the Pharah and then go to the Symmetra for the last half of the defense after getting deleted on the Pharah. And then going into the attack phase, we saw even more changes. But nonetheless, the Broncos, I think, again, it's coming down to the willingness to change heroes that is helping them a bit more in these matchups, because when it feels like the other team's starting to, actually come out on top and just get a smidgen ahead, the Broncos change one hero and they're able to bring things back in their favor.
Yeah, and now that they've put themselves on a match point, they have a dominant lead here. They can look to test any other theory if they would like to as they go forward into this. They have massive control at the moment, so you can't fault them for anything that they do want to try, or they can just stick to the books that they've already made, and whatever Texas A&M wants to bring to them, they've not really been able to break any sort of foundational understanding of what Boise State is playing.
And another thing to note is that though sometimes you want to experiment, it's always really important, because we brought it up earlier, the sportsmanship and like the spirit of the competitive game. Are the Broncos going to stick to the tried and true, what they've known and what they know they succeed on, or are they going to slip into trying something a little bit different, which can be kind of turning your nose up at someone else? I think there was just enough of a close game that they may stick with the standard composition. It is going to depend on what map is chosen next. I do not recall if it's going to be escort or if it's going to be push first. I believe it's escort, then push. Yes, we're going into escort first. With Goblin in the mix, I really advise Texas A&M to avoid Junkertown.
Yeah, they need to be knowing the strengths that their opponent has. Actually, it looks like we might be going to Route 66 according to the maps down below, so we do get some extremely large sightlines. Could look for some value brought there. And then also how we talked a little bit about, and you had mentioned that typically there are some adjustments when it comes to each checkpoint. This one you can see some changes and wavering away from just the singular composition, especially when we get to the tail end of it. That skybox is a lot more clustered together. It's a lot tighter. There's not as much vertical mobility that you can utilize. So that dynamic and how the home stretch is going to feel similar to how we have that tight, constricted area in Kings Row as well.
It's also that last checkpoint tends to be a little bit of an ego check for some teams, especially in overzealous Farah. That feels like even with the low ceiling in there, they can still succeed, and that's when an enemy team does end up completely holding that third checkpoint because comp swaps don't come out. But if the Broncos are on attack first, do anticipate they will be swapping things out if they start out on a Farah. However, with this map choice, I think they weren't anticipating playing into Kel's Wrecking Ball again, because this plays heavily into the comp that we saw on ABC on Nepal from the Broncos. That is a comp they also like to bring out here on Route 66. I really don't know, other than pulling out a Sigma, anything that the side of Texas A&M can really do in this situation.
And this is where it kind of puts the stress test for their combination of mental fortitude going into a team that is very well-rounded, but also just potentially looking to play towards their alternative strategies when it comes to their playbook. They know that they're going against somebody who is being able to have a well-rounded composition. They're playing it very effectively. Even on those moments where you do have Texas A&M manage to gain the upper hand for the moment, there is a very great digression when it comes from Boise State to reevaluate the situation, draw fights out, look for the recontest, even like we saw when it came to that first initial checkpoint to transition into the streets phase for Kings Row. Gave up the 2 spots, made sure they come back in strong, and they are just to the T very accurate in their decision making.
Also, if we're on defense, do anticipate we'll see Goblin once again on that Torbjorn. That is a very, very comfort pick for him, one that some might find trolly, but I respect it. That man knows some Torb to util and tech that I would never even think about learning. So with that being said, you can counter that with a Farah, but then you go Farah, Goblin goes Widowmaker. So there's a lot of counter swapping I anticipate in this map.
Yeah, I mean, even with, a Farah selection to try, just that turret's still going to shoot you out of the sky anyways. Like, you're trying to make a crossfire here, seeing what kind of angles you can get. But as we do talk theory, we can now start entering into Route 66 and actually seeing what the composition has in store for us. Looking just at least at the attacking side, we'll wait just a moment since there could be some last moment adjustments, but there is at least some possibility of having a more dive aggressive type of composition with that Winston Hubbard, as we do take a quick glimpse at the opposing defenders. And there's a Sojourn already up on the high ground looking for those angles.
Gonna be sneakily hiding around coast on that mega pack. We got a Brigida. We got a JQ coming out.
Okay, that's interesting. That's where I want to talk about, like, when we see experimentation, because there have been some adjustments to the Junker Queen as well, and there are some occasions where the Junker Queen can be viable and work with the coordination, but Texas A&M already gets Cal out of this early defensive position, and that's going to be Boise State drawing back, not wanting to overstay their welcome.
I mentioned Goblin making weird choices, and I think this is a side effect of said weird choices. He just doesn't like to play to the meta, and that's just how he is built. His brain runs that way. He will force the square shape of JQ into the round hole of playing Wrecking Ball any day of the week, and it's paying off in dividends right now. Kel comes back, they find Loop, and they also find Capsaicin. They find Goliath shortly thereafter, and that's a reset for the side of Texas A&M.
Yep. Main changes here for Goblin onto this Junker Queen is just that subtle extra bit of health, making it feel a little bit more safe and comfortable for the supports to continue bobbing and weaving with the commanding shout, the type of assistance you can get from having that small additional health pool. Already a minute just off the clock here, 3 to work with for Texas A&M, and the biggest thing is they already are approaching this Kitsune rush and surpassing the 2 support ultimates from Boise State.
Brigida's ult from Chosen is a little bit slow to charge when the dive isn't coming near you. You're just simply relying on using your health packs as a means of getting charged. If we can get an engage that's close to Chosen, which it looks like there was a slight one, 65% now on that rally, and it looks like they're getting it more involved as Goblin picks up 1. 2 have now gone down for Texas A&M. Winston desperately trying to retreat coastline control, going back over to Goblin. They do find Capsaicin from Plato, and now the ults are roughly balanced. Supports for Boise State definitely closer than Spidey, as they only are going to have Kitsune Rush online at the very start of this fight. Wintar may have Primal Rage, though, by the time they get a full engage.
Goblin has very quickly been able to show that the Junker Queen can work against a team that isn't as, let's say, tight or constricted in their formidable play. But Plato going to come out with the overclock, able to just commit 1 ultimate into this. There are 4 more going to be stacked up total here, and they are playing extremely aggressive to spawn.
Well, the scary part here is that Goblin forcing the JQ means that this dive is getting nullified. You use Commanding Shout when they fully engage, and then you follow up with Carnage. But we have Kel drop a Pulse Bomb on Goliath, who I guess didn't have Suzu online or just decided to take it like a champion. But yeah, that Commanding Shout along with Carnage basically nullifies any sort of advantage that a dive composition can have going on to the majority of Goblin's core unit because of the speed boost as well as the overshield.
And this is a challenging position to be in. You get the Pulse Bomb onto 1. You then have a Rail Shot onto another. The time is already low in and of itself, but when you continue to stagger it out with shots like this, Goblin going to have a beautiful ultimate down the train cart. There is nowhere for either Spidey or Luke to go with that Rampage. And now it is a Primal Rage forced Winston, hyper-focused, and eliminated in the Kitsune Rush.
That seemed like a Hail Mary play coming out from the side of Texas A&M, just trying to find a pick, knowing how far back the spawn is for the Broncos, but it did not pay off for them. We have Plato almost managed to take out Loop on that Sojourn as well. We have the overclock online for Plato, and we still have Nano. Kel is close to a Pulse Bomb. Spidey is the only one with the ult online for Texas A&M, so this is drop the beat, cross your fingers and pray moment for Texas A&M to find a pick and get that payload pushing.
This has got to be a platinum vinyl dropped by Spidey to turn this around, because Goblin still continues to carnage up front, taking full control with Plato, and another overclock to clean up the rest. Overtime is not going to stay here for long, withering away. That will be a beautiful defensive hold by Boise State and have marked their goalpost to make this a 3-0.
There is a strategy from the days of old that we've not seen in a really long time in Collegiate Overwatch, and that left side train car is where it starts. They did, technically speaking, get the payload far enough in order for them to do that close train hold and then rotate into the coal mine on the lower right-hand side underneath to do a secondary hold if need be. But the issue with running that close hold comp is that it has to be done perfectly. You have to know when you need to stall the cart. You have to wait those 3 seconds after the doors drop and have that payload touch begin before you egress into the enemy attacking team. The question is that what Texas A&M is going to do? Because that's a make or break comp, but that is a comp that is very almost glass cannon-like despite it being so brawl heavy. You make one mistake, your whole team has to reset.
Yeah, just hearing you say that tactic, it's been so long to see it. And just even when we had the May wall strat, where you just continuously rotate the wall to keep it as contention. But there's going to be nothing of those types of shenanigans here, as we do see a Doomfist. At this point, might as well roll the dice and hope that you get a nat 20.
You said shenanigans, and as soon as you said that, I'm like, I see a Doomfist silhouette. That is shenanigans in my book.
Yeah, that is shenanigans. That is the definition of shenanigans. It's literally just the Doomfist picture with a grin on their face. As we do have these doors open, a lengthy amount of time. There's Goblin on the Ramatra. Somebody was going to play it today. Not Kel, though. Kel's going to sit happily on...
Plato?
Okay. Plato? All right. Needs to run. Discord Orb is there. Gets a almost pick onto the Ana, and there goes Wanter, unfortunately unable to stay live long enough to cause harassment to Boise State, but there's at least something for the Troubles, as that gas station high ground is a point of defense here for Texas A&M.
Loop and Capsaicin picking up a couple of the Broncos. They actually have Mercy and damage boosting heal. Just fiddling on the Loop. Take down Goblin, who's now going, oh my gosh, what just happened? I got deleted.
Look at the
Capsaicin
grin on their face. I'm sorry, you just see them look at each other like, yeah, all right, let's slow our roll for a minute.
That's the I made a mistake, but it was funny moment.
That's not a funny moment though, when you get domed like that with only a couple of meters left to go. You have denial from the high ground with the Ramatra keeping the Mercy down below. The Widow versus Sojourn duel by Mini is not going to go in favor of Plato, but it doesn't matter. The payload is the object of focus. And it goes unwatched as Boise State takes this 3-0 over Texas A&M.
All right, let's see who got play of the game. It's going to be Plato on the Sojourn. I mean, like, when is it not? Very rarely.
Ole, 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 ole.
Oh my gosh.
Clean.
Hit Q and win.
Clean all around. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, it was clean.
Clean all around.
And we did see the GGs come out from the Broncos over to Texas A&M and San Antonio. So congratulations, Broncos, on a 3-0 sweep. That's back-to-back wins today. The question is, can they get a third? Because we do still have a game going up against Utah State after this one. But nonetheless, let them bask in their glory for a few more minutes and also laugh at their mistake of when they got absolutely dunked on their first engage and underestimated the Sojourn, and we lost our tank and both of our DPS in rapid succession. So it's not like the Broncos didn't win without a fight. They had to try their hardest still. And though we saw some silly plays, they did end up coming out on top.
Yeah, and again, everything that we've seen from Boise State fundamentally is what is instilled before going into the game. And the way that they've been able to keep their composure and compete against a team, whether it's a, interesting composition or something that they want to stick with, or maybe trying to take a variation of strategies, Boise State always understands how they need to lay out the plan in front of them and then stick to it. And then if things do get a little bit, risky or need to adapt, they have that depth of hero pool to be able to do that.
Hopefully they can continue to keep that in-depth hero pool going into their next game. We do still have another match lined up for tonight. But before we do that, we're actually going to do player of the game. Do you have any suggestions? We only get to make suggestions here.
I'm gonna say Plato as per usual, but if I wanted to waver away a little bit from that, I'm gonna say Kel. I thought there was still some good tank play, especially when you see in the Reinhardt and what they brought to the table and how they were able to, have that MTD diff against their opposing Reinhardt play.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kella as well. I mean, that might be the main tank in me talking, the tank player in me talking just a little bit. I feel like we give so many plays of the games to DPS as is. Let's give player of the game over to a tank or a support. So it's either Kel or Lyric for me, and it looks like our player of the game is actually going to be Goblin, our ever so infamous DPS. You can tell that we had the Torbjorn play going on here, and there was that insane Molten Core after we had a Shatter Whiff from Kel. So there will be a play that features Kel. It'll just be Goblin's play.
Yeah, instead of it being a showstopper, it's a gobstopper. Like the can't see what I'm doing. I'm making layers with this. That's what happened. But yeah, no, Goblin has always been a performer. We've seen. I used to just be enthralled when we see the Reaper play, but since we've not really had that as relevant, the ability to swap onto these other roles, whether it's a Cassie, whether it's the Torbjorn, finding value with, as we saw in this Junker Queen even, just well-rounded fundamentals, and really, really excited to see how they've been able to perform.
Maybe next time we get to see Goblin, we'll see him pop in on the support so we can have all 3 roles covered in the top 5 plays in the ICCU Player of the Game. With that being said, the Player of the Game is brought to you by the Idaho Central Credit Union, who believes a great player makes a team more successful, just like Idaho Central's helping members achieve financial success. Goblin is the Idaho Central Credit Union Player of the Game. Congratulations, Gob. You can flex your muscles on stage for a little bit longer. But we do still have another match coming up, so you can't bask in that glory for too long. Don't go anywhere, anyone. We're going to come back with more Overwatch. We'll be back here in just a few minutes.
To stay alive long enough to cause harassment to Boise State, but there's at least something for the Troubles, as that gas station high ground is a point of defense here for Texas A&M.
Loop and Capsaicin picking up a couple of the Broncos. They actually have Mercy and damage boosting heal just fiddling on the Loop. Take down Goblin, and that's just how he is built. His brain runs that way. He will force the square shape of JQ into the round hole of playing Wrecking Ball any day of the week, and it's paying off in dividends right now. Hell comes back, they find Loop, and they also find Capsaicin. They find Goliath shortly thereafter, and that's a reset for the side of Texas A&M. They're going to be a Suzu to save everyone from Goliath, who absolutely clutched up the last fight for the side of Illinois, despite them not coming out on top.
Yeah, Kel has managed to lap Wanter, and they take this next fight, and now it's desperation once again for Texas A&M. Cal is going to hold this corner and once again instantly try and get a Texas.
Hold and door the standard strat when you have a May and a Reinhardt here on control center. Coming up for Texas A&M, they're going to be close to beat. They have another Kitsune Rush, they have Shatter, they have Mail, but the first Shatter is going to be from Cal, who picks up 1. Goliath goes down, Capsaicin goes down, Lyric and Goblin go down, so
there needs to be a pick out from Illinois early. Hopefully either onto Plato or Clear, which actually happens. They lose Bob. They still have ultimates to work with, but again, they're working with reduced numbers. A Nano, aggressive play forward with free firing. It's a shooting gallery as the flux from that Merc